Hi, I'm Carl Essen, and Brian Essen is flying in for the gathering, and he designed this brochure. So I brought my airplanes to honor Brian coming in from Omaha, Nebraska, and for the gathering. Um, the cabin was construct. The cabin has two important dates, and the first date is the fact that the city of Wildwood became true, so they wouldn't put in the 109 corridor where we would have lost the cabin and cemetery. And Jim Mansour, who's the photo dude living in Wildwood, Missouri, on October 10th, 2010, took raw image pictures of the cabin, and this is what was used by the architect on the timber taking project in year 2019 to identify which timbers went where to what we have today, that supposedly in February of 2024, the cabin shall be built. Thanks for coming to the event.
Hello, my name is Robin Keefe and I am the Historic Preservation Planner for the City of Wildwood. Back behind me today is the site of the future Village Green for the City of Wildwood, which is intended to be a community spot for all of our city events. And it's also going to be the future home of the Essen log cabins, back behind me here, behind those piles of dirt. Now, I arrived on scene after much of the legend and lore that has been created around the cabin, but I do hope to tell you a little bit about the story as I know it, going back from the cabin's roots, its history, to some of its more recent history, and the shenanigans around its unauthorized disassembly before the city was able to pursue its reconstruction in earnest. So without further ado, that story follows. Thank you. This presentation is given by the City of Wildwood on behalf of the Essen family at their Cousins Gathering being held on October 7th, 2024. The Essen log cabin is a classic example of an early log structure from this area of Missouri. It was originally built in 1978. Here are the four elevations of the cabin, three of which were taken by Jim Mansour in 2010. And that top right photo there was taken by the department in 2015, just before the cabin's unauthorized disassembly. The original location of the cabin is north of City Hall along Highway 109, just south of Old Otherton Road and not far from Pond Bridge Road. It sat atop a hill overlooking the Essen family cemetery, which still exists today and is maintained by the members of the Essen family. The Essen family has a long history in Wildwood, and there are many locations and buildings that help tell the story. Though the city is only in possession of one cabin, the Essen log cabin in Orrville, the city has since determined that it's also important to tell the story of a much earlier cabin built in Pond, Missouri. At least 5 men of the Essen family emigrated to this area. G. Frederick Essen emigrated from Hanover, Germany, and settled in the Pond area by 1853, so he was first. Gerhard Rudolf Essen immigrated from Osnabrück, Germany to Philadelphia, and then finally to the Merrimack Township, which is roughly what is called Wildwood today. Gerhard married his wife, Ellen Kennedy, in Philadelphia, and they actually had 5 of their children there, living there for decades before they moved to western St. Louis County. And they did so in the late 1860s, ultimately landing in Orrville. Mark Essen tells this story way better than I do. But apparently, family lore is that when Ellen Kennedy got on the boat in county court, she had the family cow with her. However, the group encountered some rough waters in between Europe and America, and unfortunately, to preserve the life on board, poor Molly had to go overboard. I'm sure Mark will tell it again later on if you catch him. Because they settled here first, I'll start with the story of the Pond Essens. Spears Pond was so named after a pond located on the property of Cyrus Spears, who founded the community of Pond. He had acquired a large tract of land and ran a store and tavern. Eventually, this land was sold to Frederick Dreienhofer, originally from Osnabrück, Germany, and leased to G. Frederick Essen to run a store. Essen then bought it, and the area became then known as the village of Pond. He became the area's most prominent citizen and was followed in that by his children. When G. Frederick died in 1870, his wife and children ran the store and post office. And this area, or this building, actually eventually became the Pond Hotel, which was a fairly famous landmark in Wildwood before it was demolished in 2013. It was a stagecoach stop on Manchester Road. In 1875, unfortunately, this building caught fire and had to largely be rebuilt. G. Frederick's daughter, Emma Essen, ran the hotel until her death in 1940. In the 1920s, it was a very popular spot for cyclists who raved about Emma's famous fried chicken. It was so raved about that the St. Louis Cycling Club erected a monument there in 1923. Fred Essen, Emma's brother, ran the store until age 17 and then left to pursue farming. He served as Pond's postmaster from 1888 to 1892. He then went on to become an important publisher in the area, first buying the People's Advocate and then merging it with the Watchman in 1903. The Watchman Advocate provided a wealth of stories from this area in the late 1800s to the mid-1900s. Fred later became so influential that he served as a U.S. congressman. After the Civil War, he helped establish black schools in the Pond and Grover communities. The Orrville Essens came to the area much later, right around the time G. Frederick passed, likely to take advantage of the booming economy post the Civil War. Gerhard ran a shoe and boot cobbler business in Orrville and also farmed. This cabin, featured in the photo, is the cabin that is to be reconstructed. John, one of Gerhard's sons, lived in the log cabin as a child and later moved to what is now known as the Ball Essen House, preserved as part of the Ball Essen Farmstead Historic District, which is located near Babler Park in northern Wildwood, and it's also listed on the National Register of Historic Places. John and his family ran a commercial farm there that was twice the size of the average farm in St. Louis County. Francis, also known as FX, was one of John's sons. He was instrumental in bringing electricity to wide swaths of St. Louis County. His son, Don Essen, pictured on this slide, was born in Baldwin. However, he would go on to chair the Pond Grover Study Commission, resulting in the incorporation of the city of Wildwood. So many thanks is owed to the Essen family. However, let's move on to the more recent history of the Essen log cabin. The Essen log cabin was donated to the city of Wildwood in memory of William and Clara Tegethoff, who are grandparents of Ruth Martin Karst and Patricia Martin Schoenbeck. The Tegethoffs purchased the property with the historic cabin still on it as a country retreat in January of 1928. They donated the cabin to the city in 2015. However, just after this donation, the cabin disappeared in the night over the week of Thanksgiving. Everyone on the commission didn't know what to do. They just noted that the cabin was gone, and everyone was shocked. It made headlines. The Essen family members were in the newspaper talking about it. Everybody was looking for this cabin. Thankfully, the logs were recovered by the police in Wentzville, Missouri. They had found them outside of a gentleman's apartment building. That gentleman had planned to sell these logs to the highest bidder. However, the city was able to recover them and store them, and the donation went on as planned. The gentleman who had stolen them, his mother had lived nearby, and so he was aware of the cabin's existence. He and a few buddies apparently went out there with a truck and took it. Though you might be inclined to think that the city benefited from this exercise of free disassembly, the opposite was actually true. None of the logs had been tagged prior to their disassembly. And this left the city in a bit of a bind because it was hard to find bidders for the cabin's reconstruction, not knowing too much information about it beforehand. So in came Pattern Ives, an architectural firm specializing in the rehabilitation and reconstruction of historic buildings.
Hi everyone, this is Carol Quigley from Pattern Ives. Sorry to not be joining you in person today, but I just wanted to relay what a great experience it's been to be working with the City of Wildwood and the Essen family on this project, the reconstruction of the Essen log cabin for the last 5 years. It started back in 2018, 2019 when we were able to survey the existing logs and lay them out on the parking garage across the street from City Hall there in Wildwood. And it was a unique task. We've never experienced the word cabin napping before in our project history. So this was an unfortunate new word to include in our vocabulary, but we're really happy to see the final, to move on to this final end result of the reconstruction of the cabin. It's really just been overwhelming to see all the participation and the interest in this project from the residents of the City of Wildwood, in particular the Essen family. We were really looking forward to moving into the construction phase and seeing this cabin be reconstructed on the village green. We think it's going to be a really valuable amenity for the city, really special for the family, and really significant for just generally the preservation of historic assets within the City of Wildwood. So congratulations on getting this far, and we look forward to moving on to the next step. We'll see you all soon.
Buildings. Pattern Ives was tasked with two things. One, to tag the logs, and also to provide us reconstruction drawings. In September of 2019, a spectacle took place on the Wildwood parking garage. Atop the garage, the logs were all laid out for tagging, and the members of the Essen family came out to bear witness. From that log tagging exercise, Pattern Ives was able to produce a set of preliminary reconstruction drawings. However, keep in mind the time frame, September 2019. Shortly thereafter, the project was delayed another couple of years by a world pandemic. However, the Historic Preservation Commission did not give up hope, and as soon as the city was back into its more normal operations, they began to discuss where should it go. Originally, the city had planned to put the donation in Community Park, which was a new park it was building at the time in 2015, and it would have been a very nice central location in the city. However, since then, the city had acquired its new Village Green space, which was intended to be a central gathering location for all of the city's events. And it had the added bonus of being just west of City Hall and the Wildwood Police Precinct. Given the log cabin's theft, commission members felt that it was a good idea to have a little extra security. So the Village Green was in fact chosen to be the cabin's final location, and another added bonus was being present during city events for programming and activities. Meanwhile, after renewed publicity around the cabin's reconstruction, the city was contacted by Bob Shocknet. And Bob Shocknet had acquired a set of logs from the Manchester Athletic Association back in the 1990s when they took down Manchester's fifth oldest house in favor of building a new parking lot. Inside that house was a log cabin dated to the same period as the Essen log cabin. So Mr. Shocknet offered those logs in donation to the city, and the city went out to his property in rural Missouri to collect them. Shortly thereafter, Pattern Ives came to reassess the condition of the Essen log cabin logs, given that they had sat in storage for another 5 years. They did determine that they were still in good condition. They also had an opportunity to assess the Manchester logs and determine that they could be helpful in Dutchman repairs for the Essen log cabin, though they did not offer any full log replacements, unfortunately. Mysteries continued to be solved and facts untangled well into the cabin's reconstruction planning. Just this year, Carol Quigley, the project architect from Pattern Ives, brought to the Commission's attention that what had originally been tagged as the front of the cabin wasn't actually the cabin's front. We had originally thought the front of the cabin was the facade pictured below in this central photo with Mark Essen and Allison Essen hugging. However, that wasn't actually the front of the cabin. The front of the cabin was covered up by that later addition in that top right-hand photo. We believe that addition was a kitchen addition. It will not be reconstructed with the Essen log cabin in Village Green. So we will be able to uncover that original front facade as part of this project. In addition to untangling mysteries, we also needed to concern ourselves with accessibility to the cabin because we wanted to make sure that everybody in Wildwood had an opportunity to enjoy it and visit it. So Carol Quigley offered us a wonderful solution in the form of a gradually sloped path, taking a user who might be using a wheelchair or some other type of device to a secondary door in the cabin, without need for a ramp. So we felt like this was a very tasteful and also historically accurate way of facilitating that access. So we were very happy with that solution. So that brings us to where we are currently, where we do have a full set of bid-ready reconstruction plans that do need to be advertised and put out the door. We are hoping to have a fully physical reconstructed cabin by the end of this year or beginning of next. Meanwhile, we've been having a lot of fun getting the word out at various city events. And Carl Essen in particular has been an active sponsor of a lot of our activities. One of the more fun activities has been challenging people of all ages to build their own Essen log cabin out of Lincoln logs. But if you hope to see the real deal, we would like to invite you out probably next year for an unveiling of the Essen log cabin once it's been completed. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your event.
I'm Steve Scott. I've been involved with the Historical Preservation Commission now for several years. Not as long as the city has been trying to reconstruct the log cabin that was generously donated to us. We've hired the firm, the architectural firm of Pattern Ives, and they've produced an excellent set of construction documents, and we're ready to build it. I've taken these drawings and tried to make a three-dimensional video of the cabin. So it'd be possible to walk around it, walk inside of it, walk through it, and get some idea of what it's going to be like before we put it up. That video follows. Thank you.